I'm going to stop calling you a white man.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask you to stop calling me a black man.
My mind was a train, it be shining. If I had my gifts on my wrist, they be diamonds. If I had my soul on my feet, it be retro. Every time I hop on a beat, they like, let's go loco.
The story that we're dealing with in this class is this concept of blackness and whiteness, right? Because this is America, and we know that that's a ghost that we have amongst us. All right, it is a real ghost. It's a real ghost, and it's a ghost that has been actualized. You guys remember that ghosts are ideas, right? And the text is a ghost until it is written, right? And now this ghost, this specific idea, unlike it being written in ink or written with paint, drawn with paint, created with paint, this idea was created with blood, right? Many people died because they were black, right? And many people also have died because they're white. People have died because this thing is real. Even though, you know, a lot of people, they like to say that Jesus was black. It didn't exist back then, okay? Back then, if you told him he was black, he would tell you that he was a Jew, all right? Because he was, right? That's exactly what he was. But this ghost that we've created, this ghost that we have in our day, it has been actualized, and it's been actualized by blood. I promise you guys, if you were to be torturing me because I believe the sky is red, and you cut off my fingers, and then I'm telling you the sky is red, then you cut off my hand, and I said the sky is red, and then you stab me, and when I'm bleeding out, I tell you the sky is red, I promise you, it would start a debate. People would look up at the sky and say, what did he see? And you know why they'd look up at the sky and wonder what I saw? Is because I put blood on it. I put my life on it, right? And because my life was put on it, it's bringing an idea that may not even be true or real into reality. And so that's why it is true that it is to a great extent, it's disrespectful to dismiss blackness, because blackness has been written in blood. It's disrespectful to dismiss whiteness, because whiteness, it has been written in blood. And the only issue is that this ghost can possess us. This ghost of blackness and whiteness, it can possess us, lord over us, dominate our thinking, the way that we navigate. But when you meet those or know those who are affected by this ghost, we ought to have a little bit of sympathy because of all the blood that was shed. Mind you, glory be to God, I pride myself in not being burdened by this ghost. I think it's funny. Much like how you guys know that comedians often bring this ghost into the room. They start talking about black people and white people, and oftentimes the white people, they got to look at the black people to find out if they can laugh and stuff like that. And it's because they're affected by the ghost. They know what was said was funny, but they're like, can I, is it okay? And that's the ghost right there. But comedians pride themselves in dominating the ghost. Not being dominated by it, but pointing at it and laughing because it's silly, this concept of blackness and whiteness. The truth of the matter is that we're all American, if you're American. I'm joking. Well, no, actually, I'm not. You might not be American. But if you are, then you should understand this thing, that we are not divided by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. The thing that should divide us is ideas, like bad ideas. That's what you should be prejudiced against, like someone who has bad ideas. Like if someone thinks it's an okay idea to beat their wife, that's where it's like, well, you know, that has got nothing to do with how you look, bro. It's what you believe, right? I do not believe what you believe. And so that's the content of your character. You understand, right? We are divided by that, not by the way people look. But at the same time, when you encounter this ghost, when you see it, we often need to have some sympathy because it's a real ghost, at least. All right. Now, Paul Laurence Dunbar was one of the first black poets in America to really eat off of his writing. Like he actually lived off of his writing. And he was famously known for writing wonderful pieces. This is one that really does stand out because he addresses an issue without addressing it directly. But it's pretty direct if you know what he's talking about. All right? Now, I want you to consider this caged bird that is the main character of this poem to be the person affected by the ghost. Now, there was a time when the cage was physical. There was a time when the cage was physical. Black people were in a physical cage. But we're in a new time. And this new time that we're in, there is no physical cage. I promise you. Every white person in here, every black person in here, every color in between, you are not in a cage unless you're in a psychological cage. The cages have changed. That thing I told you about where you got to check if somebody else is laughing so that you can laugh, that's the psychological cage. Okay? So these cages, they have ranges. Now let's look. It says, I know what the caged bird feels. Alas, when the sun is bright on the upland slopes, when the wind stirs soft through the springing grass, and the river flows like a stream of glass, when the first bird sings and the first bud opes, and the faint perfume from its chalice steals, I know what the caged bird feels. And so the caged bird, they're bound by this cage, and right after he says, I know what the caged bird feels, he begins to talk about the beauty of nature and how beautiful nature is, and how when you're not in a cage, you can truly experience nature for what it is. Suddenly, everything that is what it is gets to be what it is. Something that is funny gets to be funny. Something that is bad gets to actually be bad. Something that's good gets to actually be good when you're not in the cage. This bird sees what is good but cannot experience it because of the cage. What do birds naturally want to do? I know why the caged bird beats his wing, till its blood is red on the cruel bars, for he must fly back to his perch and cling, when he fain would be on the boa swing, and the pain still throbs in the old scars, and they pulse again with a keener sting. I know why he beats his wing. Now, this is the natural process of a bird, right? Why do birds flap their wings? Because they flap their wings, right? They flap them to fly. Sometimes they flap them for fun. The point is that birds flap their wings, right? What do? We think. We're meant to think, right? We're naturally meant to think. And what happens is when you're in this cage, it causes blood to be on these cruel bars. And notice this, it says, for he must fly back to his perch and cling. So within the cage, the bird has a place that is his own, but it's within this cage. He has a perch, and notice, he immediately likens the perch to what is natural for the bird. When he fain would be on the boa swing, just so you know what a bow is like a branch, right? The bird's meant to be landing on a branch, but he's out here landing on his perch, right? Oftentimes you could even call this psychologically an echo chamber, where someone feels safe. They go back to their perch, where everything that they know is true, and nothing from outside can come within it. Notice what happens. It says, and a pain still throbs in the old scars, and they pulse again with a keener sting. I know why he beats his wing. Our natural thing is to think. But sometimes when we think, while you're in this psychological cage, old scars can pulse again with a keener sting. I'll try to contemporize it for you. Once I went on a first date with a girl, and she was American, you know, black American, right? I'm black too. I am, but I'm not affected by the ghost, or at least not as affected by the ghost, right? And to be more specific, I'm not necessarily like a black American. I wasn't born here, right? I was born in England. My mom told me when I was younger, she said, out there you are in America, inside you are in Nigeria. So in my house, I was in Nigeria. Like that, it was Nigerian laws within my home, right? And so sometimes you have to wonder, I mean, if everybody with dark skin is black, then what's black culture? Because I know people in Brazil don't experience black culture. They experience Brazilian culture. I have friends from Cuba who say there's a bunch of black people in Cuba, but they experience Cuban culture. They don't know what black culture is. And so what is black, right? And she was black. Like American black, right? And so took her to this hot pot place. I don't really like hot pot places because you have to cook your own food even though you're paying for it. And I really get into conversations. I have ADHD, so I'll forget that my food is burning, and then I'll burn my food, and then I'll put new food there, and then get in a conversation. I'll burn my food. I end up not eating, right? I don't eat because I keep on burning my food. But I was trying to impress her. You know, hot pot is kind of, you know, it's fancy, right? It's fancy. It's fancy stuff. A bit, is it? I think so. But yeah, so we walked in, and she grabbed my arm when we walked in. She grabbed my arm, and I was like, what's going on? And she wasn't even looking at me. I looked at her, and she was like this. And she said to me, Joyce. I was like, what? She's like, there's no black people in here. And when I tell you that, it was like a ghost. I walked in, I didn't see that. In fact, when she said it, I was like, sure enough. Oh, no, he's Hispanic. That's all right. And she was just like, yeah, and I was like, that's fine, right? And she was like, I mean, it's cool. And then we sat down. We sat down, and she was just like, just on edge. In fact, I was able to cook my food because we weren't having a conversation really. She was just like looking around, bothered by this ghost. You're meant to be able to think normally, but there's this psychological cage where because of the ghost, you can't think, you can't beat your wings like you normally would beat your wings. I'm over here flying. I was in there flying, like I was fine, you know, surrounded by a bunch of American people, or at least I'm presuming that everybody in there is American. I wasn't bothered, but there was a real issue to the point that we had to go to another location. Because what did I have? Let's go back up. A little bit of sympathy. Because I'm watching and I'm looking and I'm like, man, you are beating your wings against this cage and you're bleeding. Like it's bad. Like it's tough. And we ended up having to go to this place that I went through Google Maps and I was like, where's the blackest place? I need to find the blackest place I could find. And I did. The food was good. The food was good at a hot pot place, but I'm not gonna lie. Food was good, right? The food was good. It was a bit expensive. I don't know why they do that. I don't know why they do that, man. Anyways, that's a side issue. But the point is that I wasn't in a cage, but she was. And I had to have sympathy and get her out of that cage. But did I really get her out of that cage, or did she just go back to her perch? You understand? Instead of landing somewhere that's natural, as in you can eat anywhere in America, we don't have to do sit-ins anymore, bro. Like, everything's cool. She'd rather go back to her perch. The point is that there is a psychological cage that we're dealing with today. Paul Laurence Dunbar, understand that this is all symbolic, and I love that it's this beautiful symbol and that he uses a bird that is not an actual person so that we can apply it to today. Because the cage expands past physicality. What was physical before has become psychological. Now listen to the songs. I know why the caged bird sings. Ah, me. When his wing is bruised and his bosom sore, when he beats his bars and he would be free, it is not a carol of joy or glee, but a prayer that he sends from his heart's deep core, but a plea that upward to heaven he flings. I know why the caged bird sings. Now, the assumption is that birds are meant to sing out of joy, right? Birds are meant to sing from the glee in their heart. But when there's this cage, which it was very physical at a time, the singing still doesn't stop. We don't stop singing. The songs just change, right? The things that we sing about just change. And if you listen to music today, you might find that people are in a cage, that the music has to. It needs to be about your booty, right? It needs to be about your butt or your money or your stuff or it's like you're trapped in a cage. There was a time when music was different, when it was a bit more free. But what's weird is, and I'm telling you guys, it's this perch. What's weird is that one would count the freedom to sing about their butt as freedom. and not a cage. They won't think it's a cage. They'll think it's their perch. I'm most comfortable twerking, right? Like that's when I feel free. And hey, that's the weird thing about this psychological cage, is that unlike what it was in the past, which honestly was more clear, at least you knew that you were trapped, a lot of people today don't know that they're trapped. They don't know that they're trapped into a way of thinking. I have sympathy for my brothers who tell me that Jesus was black, because it's like, you're stuck. Like you're stuck because somehow you're reading about a man from 2,000 years ago and telling him that he's black, because everything has to be black or white. Everything has to be. Everything has to be. And that's what's happening in your mind. Everything has to be. We are burdened by something that's very hard to see. It's a ghost. Pops up all over the time. I mean, all over the place. It pops up all over the place. You'll see it everywhere. I was born in England. My parents are both planting churches everywhere. Moved to Chicago. Moved to Sacramento, California. Picked up skateboarding. Loved to skate. The entire time, I'm in America. If anything, coming from England to America is an American story. Anyways, point is that I came from Sacramento, California. When I got to Houston, people don't make fun of people in Sacramento, California like they do in Houston, right? In Houston, I came here in 5th grade, and 5th graders aren't good people. They're bad people. And the second I came into class, and they were like, "What's your name?" My name's already Choice. So everybody looked at me, and then when I spoke, this one dude, forget his name, but he was like, "You sound white." And ever since that point, and that's when I discovered it. It was like he showed me the ghost. He was like, "You sound white." And I was like, "I sound white." He's like, "You did it again." I was like, I was like, wait, I sound white? It's like, I think I sound like me. But I guess, people like me, and I've heard people say Childish Gambino sounds white. And it's like, yeah, you've heard that before? It's like, what does that mean, sound white? That's the ghost. That's a psychological cage. You've never met someone with my skin tone that speaks this way, so then you have to land back on your perch so that you feel comfortable, and you're like, white voice. Definitely a white voice. And what's crazy is that when I was in 5th grade, it's so sad, because when you're a kid, just so you know, and you're going to see it with this story, kids are very impressionable, right? So when I was a kid and they told me I sounded white, I started trying to change my voice. I was like, "Hey, yo." I was like, what's up, guys? And they're like, "Hey, stop it, bro. Stop it, bro. We know you're a spy." And I was like, what are you going to do? It's hard to combat the ghost. It's hard. There are a lot of people in this world that if a black dude told them to get out of the street, they get run over by a truck because they're not moving. Same thing with a white guy. If a white guy told them, "Hey, you got to get out of the street," they'd be like, "I don't trust you." It's like, that's the ghost. And a lot of people are very affected by this thing. And then they naturally just spread it onto other people's lives, because it's the life that you live in. It's the world that you live in. I saw this one, it was a very interesting experiment that they did. You could look it up. I think they had about 40 women, and the women were meant to do interviews. But they told them, for the sake of this social experiment, they told them that they were going to cover their faces with scars. Like they were going to put scars on their faces with makeup, right? And they only put scars, unbeknownst to the women, they only put scars on half of their faces. But all of them went into the interview thinking that they had scars on their faces. And all of them came back saying that they faced discrimination because they had scars on their faces. That people said things to them in certain ways because they had scars on their faces, that they looked at them in certain ways because they had scars on their faces. What occurred was a ghost was planted in their head. An idea was planted in their head about how they look. And so when they went into the interview, they were looking for it. They were looking for it. Yeah, it's like a placebo effect. They were looking for the discrimination because of the ghost that was planted in their head. This happens to people all the time. Instead of it being scars on your face, you'll simply tell a child that, "Hey, because of the way your skin looks, people are going to treat you differently." And whenever in their life they're treated any sort of way differently, They point to the ghost.
I'm being oppressed.
I'm being oppressed. You're doing this. Have you guys seen that movie Carry On? Anybody seen the movie Carry On? One of my favorite parts of it in Carry On is when they're stopping everybody to search them. And the white dude's like, y'all are doing this because I'm white. And then the black dude's like, y'all are doing this because I'm black. And then they just go through a bunch of races. They're checking everybody, right? It's because I'm green. Like everyone you check is going to refer to the ghost if the ghost is in their mind. It's just what happens. And how many people are in this sort of cage? A lot of people. It affects everything, guys. Y'all know February is coming up, right? Y'all know what it is, right? They call it Black History Month. But what's interesting about Black History Month is that during Black History Month, we only talk about Americans.
Black History Month you find
Ridiculous.
why?
You're going to relegate my history to a month?
Oh, come on.
What do you do with yours? Which month is White History Month? No, come on, tell me.
Well, I'm Jewish.
Okay, which month is Jewish History Month?
There isn't one.
Oh, why not?
Yeah.
Do you want one?
No.
I don't either. I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history.
We only talk about Martin Luther King, Ben Carson, might bring in Barack Obama, the dude who made peanut butter, George Washington, Hoover or Harvard or whatever, Carver?
I can double check.
Yeah, we only talk about Black Americans during Black History Month, but we call it Black History Month. And what's funny is that someone said it in the last class. They literally, he's a very eccentric guy. He was like, yeah, let us have our 28 days. And it's like, it's not yours. It's America's. Because we know it'd be weird if you started talking about Mansa Musa on Black History Month, or if you started talking about the first president of Nigeria on Black History Month. People would be like, why are you bringing them up? It's like, I thought it was about black people. Oh, it's obvious that we're talking about a specific people, American people. We're just being racist about it. But it's accepted because we're all in this cage. Well, not all of us. Some of us are outside of it, and I promise you, some of the things I'm saying sound crazy to someone. Like, they sound crazy to someone. Like, it might even sound like I'm trying to oppress black people. Like, for real. It really can sound like that, but it's simply because I'm outside of a cage talking about what it's like to be within it. When you're in it, that's what it's like. I tried to tell the student, I told him, I said, hey, if a white girl got on TikTok and started breaking everything down about Black history and Black History Month, do you think that'd be okay? He was like, oh, yeah, it'd be fine. And everybody was like, bro, what? Like, if you read the comment, people would be like, what's your business talking about this? Well, like, that's what would happen. They would tell her to mind her business, even though she'd probably only be talking about Americans in America who did things for America. But we, like it's a weird natural thing that we divide ourselves. We divide ourselves. There is a psychological cage that we are dealing with, right? It's tough. It's sad. It's embedded into, there's not systemic racism, but there are things like Black History Month, guys. And that is weird.